afternoon or morning to all our participants today. On behalf of Grant Thornton Bharat, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar to launch the Britain Meets India report produced in partnership with CII. The UK and India have an enduring partnership, and the very vibrant corridor between the two countries has become all the more significant following the recent pandemic and other geopolitical developments. Grant Thornton has been working closely for nearly 3 decades on both ends of this corridor to help companies from both countries with their growth and expansion plans. The unbeatable India UK combination has boundless opportunities for mutual growth, and the time is now opportune to step up this partnership. So, without further delay, I would now like to request Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj, Vice President CII, and CMD Bajaj FinServ to deliver his opening remarks. Mr. Bajaj.
Thank you, Soumya. Your Excellency Gayatri Sar Kumar, our High Commissioner to the UK, Your Excellency Alex LSCMG, our new High Commissioner of the UK to India, Mr. Sandeep Chakravarti, Joint Secretary Western Europe, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, Lord Karan Bilimoria, President of the Confederation of British Industry, who have had the opportunity now over the years to meet in real life and virtually a few times, Anuj, Vishesh, and colleagues from Grant Thornton, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. Let me start by congratulating Excellency Alex Ellis for his new role as High Commissioner of the UK to India, and a warm welcome from all of us. Over the past few days, you have met with CII over discussions on trade, investment, and climate change during the recently concluded visit of the Right Honourable Elizabeth Truss, Secretary of State, International Trade, as well as Mr. Alok Sharma, the President for COP26. Our High Commissioner to the UK has been in this post during a most trying period. I remember the last time I was at an event with her, she had just moved in. And I would like to commend her and her team for the stellar work that they've been doing in supporting individuals and businesses throughout this pandemic. Friends, this year, 2021, is a year for economic recovery, and a year that we very much hope will bring this much awaited enhanced trade partnership agreement between India and UK to fruition. This year is also an important year for CII as we complete our 40th year of operations in UK. And our rep office in the UK is the oldest international office in the CII network. And that goes to saying something about the relationships that we value between our two countries and the business organizations. My congratulations to Pallavi, Vishesh, and the team at Grant Thornton Bharat for hosting this web launch, for this much sought after report, and for the significant work that has been put in. We are all familiar with this India Meets Britain Tracker report, of which we have brought you 7 editions so far. The figures that were published by Grant Thornton and CII are quoted widely as a reference point of Indian investment in the UK. We are also often asked about the UK investments in India, and therefore felt it was important to bring these figures to you, which we now present with a holistic picture of our bilateral investments. We are hence proud to be able to present to you statistics on the fastest growing British investments in India, some surprising and some not so surprising revelations ahead. As we also prepare to welcome the UK Prime Minister, Right Honourable Boris Johnson, to India, our Honourable Minister of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Piyush Goyal, and the UK's Secretary of State, Ms. Truss, supported by both UK and Indian industry, are keen on increasing bilateral trade and investment, as also making progress on the enhanced trade partnership between our two countries. The UK and India are amongst the largest investors in each other's economies. UK stands sixth largest as an inward investor in India and also ranks third amongst the G20 countries, accounting for nearly 6% of all inward investments over the last 20 years. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today presenting to you the important findings that further demonstrate the strength of our economic partnership. The report also represents the strong focus that UK and India has had not only in basic industrial development, but energy, infrastructure, sustainability, professional and financial services, as well as, importantly, healthcare. CII has a strong commitment to establishing a regional connect between the two countries. In the UK, we are founding board members of the Manchester India Partnership and the West Midlands India Partnership. It is important to see certain key states that are deemed as regional partners to these regions in the UK. We see that they feature in the report, which only means that our effort on the ground has started to have a visible, tangible outcome. As champions of UK-India trade and investment, the report findings indicate trends and also the mood of UK investments in India. In CII, we continue to work to ensure that business linkages are further strengthened between our two nations and shall continue to deepen our engagement with all stakeholders. We are particularly grateful to the industry, to stakeholders across the regions, our MOU partners, Grant Thornton, the High Commission of India and UK governments in this journey. Thank you, and back to you, Soumya.
Thank you, Mr. Bajaj. India is likely to be an even more preferred partner for the UK, especially post-Brexit, leading to an enhanced economic partnership. I would now like to invite Mr. Sandeep Chakrabarty, Joint Secretary, Europe West, Ministry of External Affairs, to share his thoughts on how the government is working towards further deepening this relationship. Mr. Chakrabarty.
Thank you, Soumya. Thank you, CI and Grant Thornton. I must say that this is the third investment event that I'm attending today related to the EU into India, and they have a very fabulous portal called the Nalanda portal, which after I listened into the call between our Commerce and Industry Minister and Secretary of State Trust, and this is the third event. So I think as my day reveals that UK is very much the flavor of the month or of at least the year, and we have started virtual events of leading US ministers, secretaries. We are working on the enhanced trade partnership, and if you have seen the joint statement which came out at the end of Secretary of State Trust visit, we are talking of a free trade agreement. We're talking of an interim trade deal. Apart from that, we are also working on something known as the 360-degree roadmap, which has considerable emphasis on strengthening our relationship. It has got 5 pillars. One is, of course, connecting people, the defense and security, climate change and healthy movement events, and interaction will take place over the next 10 years. It's a 10-year roadmap, which is during the Prime Ministerial visit. In addition, we are also working on something known as the free and easier movement of people. Is happening, Soumya, in the India-UK corridor, and I think this report will really be a guide and also will incentivize a lot of us who want to see a greater UK investment into India. I will end by saying that last year we also had what is known as the financial, economic and financial dialogue between the Chancellor of the Exchequer and our Finance Minister. And even that dialogue was very, very useful in the sense that several new initiatives have been announced in terms of UK investment, creation of new investment facilities, and we hope to see more UK investment coming in, particularly in the environment, clean energy, and in climate sectors. So on the whole, I think it's a very propitious beginning of the year, and no better than releasing this report by CII and Grant Thornton. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chakrabarty, for your comments. It is now my pleasure to announce the formal release of the Grant Thornton Bharat CII Britain Meets India report. The report covers companies from the UK who continue to grow, invest, and expand in India. And the report lists the top UK companies in India by size, growth, and employment generation, as well as providing an outlook for UK investment in India in future years. So with that, I would now request my colleague Pallavi Bakru, who's the India-UK corridor leader at Grant Thornton Bharat, to present the key highlights of the Britain Meets India report. Over to you, Pallavi.
Thank you, Soumya. It's a good evening and a very warm welcome to all of you. It's a pleasure to see the report finally being released. It's been a labor of love for some of us at Grant Thornton in trying to put this report together. What's unique about this report is the amount of accent it has on quantitative data. And this is essentially meant to complement the work that Grant Thornton UK and Anuj's team have been doing in the last couple of years, which both Mr. Bajaj and Mr. Chakrabarty alluded to. So the Britain Meets India is to complement the India Meets Britain report. We've looked at data from a very quantitative lens. We've looked at the number of companies, their turnover, their contribution to the exchequer, the number of employees they have. So here it is. I'll just give you a sense of what it really took to put this together. We started by essentially looking at companies which had their parent based out of the UK, and we had some about 800 odd companies that we came across. But since our focus was numbers, the financial data was very patchy. So we decided that we look at the companies which have done their formal financial filing in the MCA portal, which is the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, for March 2019 and March 2020. So these 572 companies that we came up with forms the base of our data. These cumulatively have a turnover of 3,390 billion rupees and contributed 173 billion rupees as taxes. They collectively employ over 4 lakh people. The largest employer was Group 4 Securities, followed by Vedanta, which employs close to 80,000 people. And 23 companies we found in this set of companies which employ more than 1,000 people each. A list of these companies with the largest turnover, being the largest employers, are all part of our tracker. We also looked at diversity on these companies since we had access to their financial statements. And we found that out of the 572 companies, 60 companies reported having at least one woman on their board. So 10% of the companies had diversity. Our next endeavor was to actually pick out the companies which are fast growing, which we typically call our growth tracker companies. So we used another filter, and this was now out of the 572 companies that we had, we looked at companies which had a turnover of more than 500 million rupees and a growth over 10%. And we came up with these 91 companies, which are all listed in our report, which were the growth tracker companies. They had a combined turnover of 1,161 billion rupees and an average rate of growth of 26%. Surprisingly, we came across 2 companies which had a growth rate of more than 100%, the fastest growing being Dyson Technologies, followed by Aviva Life Insurance Company. Interestingly, we also ran a diversity check on the growth tracker companies, as we call them, these 91 companies. And we found that 16 of the 91 companies reported having at least one woman director on the board. So now we suddenly had 18% of these companies having diversity in their board. And as they say, numbers speak for themselves. So I will sort of not wax eloquent any further about what it really means to have diversity. We also looked at the sectors. And the most dominant sector that came up was industrial. The 3 fastest growing UK companies in the sector were Next Polymers Limited, followed by Via Minerals India Private Limited and JCB India Limited. The surprising second sector was with 21% was business process outsourcing. This was a bit of a surprise to us. We didn't expect them to be so close to industrials, but I think this is again a testimony of the fact that there is good infrastructure available in India. There are a lot of English-speaking people available, so there's a lot of business process outsourcing that's happening into India. Diageo Business Services was the fastest growing in this segment. And another interesting segment that we found was energy and power. And FMC Technology India is the fastest growing in this segment. We then looked at the geographical dispersion of companies. And here it's interesting to note that this is not a description of where the manufacturing facilities are located. This is really where the companies have set up their corporate offices and where they are registered. It's interesting to note the largest number is in Maharashtra. And then, the next set is more in the Delhi NCR region, which clearly indicates that companies like to set up their corporate offices close to policymakers or where there's easy access to financial institutions, infrastructure like schools, healthcare, and good international connectivity. So really, no surprises here. But this was just another analysis that we ran. As we just heard, UK is the 6th largest FDI contributor into India. We have a mutual bilateral trade of about $26.7 billion. Clearly, there's a lot of room to do a lot more. And we wanted to take this opportunity to stress on some of the recent changes that have been done in India in the tax and regulatory space, which would be of interest to either companies that are in India and looking to expand or those contemplating to set up in India. One is the special rate of income tax that's been proposed for companies that set up manufacturing before 31st of March 2023. There's a rate of 15%, which with all surcharges included would somewhere come to 17%, which is an extremely competitive rate. Just to give you a comparison, China and South Korea have a corporate rate of tax of 25% for manufacturing companies. For Vietnam, Thailand, they have 20%, and Singapore has 17%. So that's just to give you the landscape, what it looks like. The other significant development has been in the PLI scheme, as it is called, which is Production Linked Investment Scheme that was announced last year. It started with 3 sectors, which were mobile phone manufacturing, drug intermediaries and API, and manufacturing of medical devices. This was then extended to another 10 industries. And the idea was to give impetus for companies to increase their production. So companies that register themselves and are eligible for the next 5 years could get an incentive of anything between 4 to 6% of their incremental sales. Just to give you a flavor of the industries that have been added to this list to be eligible for PLI, there's advanced chemical battery production, electronic technology products, automobile and auto components, pharmaceutical drugs, telecom and networking products, textile, food products, high efficiency solar modules, white goods, and specialty steels. Another interesting development has been the faceless tax assessment in India. We've been filing returns online for a while in India, but assessments were always a painful exercise, as most people who've done business and filed returns in India will know. It's now become faceless, and it's not just faceless at the assessment level, it's even become faceless at the appellate level, right up to the tax tribunal. So we see this being a sort of a good leg up for those wanting to sort of file their returns and have an easy course with the tax department here. Another significant change is the new labor code that is being brought in. Typically, there were about 29 regulations that sort of affected a company that ran operations and employed laborers in India. That's all going to be done away with. And there are going to be 4 codes, which is the Code of Wages 2019, Industrial Relations Code 2020, the Social Security Code 2020, and the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code 2020, which are going to be brought in. These have already received the assent of the Parliament and the President. It just needs to be introduced now, and we're hoping that they'll be operational from 1st of April 2021. The benefits that this new labor code is going to bring in is that there's going to be uniformity in the definition of wages. It'll cover social security, even for gig and platform workers. Women will be allowed to work in all categories, including night shifts with adequate protection. Companies which have a workforce of up to 300 people will be able to lay off workers without government approval. And all registrations and licensing and filing of returns will be made online. And lastly, and most importantly, there'll be compounding for delays in offenses and no penal action will be taken. So I think these are some pretty significant changes that have happened in the recent times. But it would also be good to mention, some of the things that have been introduced in the gift city in Gujarat, considering UK is a hub for financial services and London is the capital of the financial services worldwide. Gift City was introduced actually in 2019. It's basically an international financial and services center. It was meant for financial services companies and asset management companies, insurance companies, companies offering IT and ITES services to come up and set themselves up for tax benefits in this area. What has also been added in the recent budget is incentives for investment banking by offshore banks and aircraft leasing. This is something that sort of allows you to be in Indian territory and yet be treated as a non-resident, be eligible for tax holidays and a lot of tax exemptions. So this is something we wanted to leave with those who have an interest in the financial services space. In a sense, the outlook for the India-UK economic partnership looks extremely bright. There is a strong cooperation between both the countries despite the pandemic. We've seen it in the area of vaccine manufacturing. We've all spoken about the enhanced trade partnership, the visit of the Secretary of State recently, and the conversations that are on between both the governments. India continues to focus on its various programs like Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, essentially trying to give impetus to manufacturing and set up a global supply chain hub in India. There is constant effort to increase the ease of doing business in India. And hence we see that in the post-Brexit era, there'll be a lot of strategic partnerships in the area of healthcare, life sciences, digital and data services, food and drinks, chemicals and services, where India and UK will see meaningful partnerships. In closing, I'd say that the future of the India and UK economic relationship will focus on narrowing down trade barriers, creating jobs, and encouraging innovation in this very important corridor. And we at Thornton feel privileged to be able to assist you in this journey. Thank you. Soumya, over to you.
Thank you, Pallavi, for sharing the highlights of the report. Well, we've been waiting to hear from our distinguished guests on the future of this very important bilateral relationship. So without further delay, I would like to invite Her Excellency Gayatri Isar Kumar, High Commissioner of India to the UK, His Excellency Alexander Ellis, British High Commissioner to the Republic of India, and Lord Karan Bilimoria, President of the Confederation of British Industry and Chairman of Cobra Beer, for a fireside chat. I also invite my colleague Anuj Chande, Head of the South Asia Group at Thornton, UK, to moderate the session. Anuj, over to you.
Thank you very much, Soumya. Before I have a fireside chat with our distinguished guests, and thank you all for taking out the time to join us today for this auspicious event. Can I just personally say how proud I am that we have launched this Britain Meets India Tracker Report in collaboration with the CII this year. I say this because I was the instigator of the India Meets Britain report. I hasten to hesitate to use the word instigator given recent US events, but we instigated that report in 2014. So together with the Britain Meets India report, we now have a full comprehensive picture of the importance of the economic contribution of both countries to their respective economies. So what I'm going to do in terms of this fireside chat is I'm going to ask each of our distinguished guests to give some opening remarks in terms of the report and some of the comments made by Pallavi. And then I will ask a couple of questions to each of them in turn. And if time allows, we will answer any questions we have from the audience. What I'd like to do is, I understand Your Excellency, High Commissioner to India, to the UK, Mrs. Kumar, that you have to have an urgent appointment. So maybe I will start with you in terms of giving your opening remarks on this launch of this report. Over to you, Your Excellency.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. And I just wanted to congratulate Grant Thornton. First of all, my warm greetings to the distinguished guests on this and the participants, Lord Karan Bilimoria, His Excellency, the High Commissioner of UK to India, Mr. Alex Ellis, and the other distinguished participants, Shri Sanjeev Bajaj, Vice President of the CII. Thank you for your kind words and this wonderful initiative. I'm just absolutely delighted to join you in launching the very first Britain Meets India report, which seems to be a very, very natural and a very useful and obvious follow-up, building on the success of the report India Meets Britain Tracker, which is published annually as a key source of data related to Indian companies in the UK since 2014. I think it's very useful to be able to identify the fastest growing British companies in India and the top revenue earners. And this report will serve to project a very low-flying overview of the British industries in India, their locations, data, output, and other relevant information for those wanting to invest or do business with India. And the important thing is that it will help to highlight successful collaborations and identify the key complementarities, which are many, and the areas of potential. And the fact that you are identifying the UK-owned corporates with operations headquartered or with a significant base in India, with a turnover of more than 500 million Indian rupees and a high year-on-year revenue growth. That all helps to encourage future investors, and especially those who are looking for a very secure footing as they set foot or as they position themselves to come into our to join with partners in India. It's also, as my colleague Sandeep said, a very opportune moment when Britain, having left the EU, is forging a new path of independent economic and trade relations with traditional partners like India. And our two ministers who met this morning, Honorable Secretary of State for International Trade, Madam Elizabeth Truss, and our Union Commerce and Industries Minister, Shri Piyush Goyal, our two governments are committed to an enhanced trade partnership. We are developing a roadmap towards a comprehensive free trade agreement. And the target is an ambitious target of 100 billion pounds by 2030. So that is something to work towards. The visit of Right Honorable Prime Minister to India and the 10-year roadmap for bilateral cooperation, which will be finalized by then. All these add to our very, very intensified engagement on a common prosperity agenda, revival after the twin crises of the pandemic and the economic impact of that, and prosperity. So, so those are, I mean, the fact that that is happening, and at the same time, Government of India has undertaken bold economic reforms which have visibly enhanced India's attractiveness as an investment destination. We are also thinking of an initiative to facilitate investment flows, like a pipeline between India and the UK, and which envisages a new type of a financing deal. Let's see how that comes out. But that is something on which we are sort of thinking, and our governments will talk soon enough. But healthcare is also a key pillar and at the core of our revised and reprioritized agenda. I think that's very obvious. The successful collaboration of Serum Institute, Oxford and AstraZeneca on a life-saving and a brilliant vaccine will obviously have a powerful demonstration effect. And our work to and our commitment to distribute vaccines on an equitable, with global access, affordable global access to vaccines, makes it a unique partnership for mutual benefit, and at the same time, a partnership for a better world. And this can be emulated across the sectors so that it's a win-win-win for everybody concerned. I'd just like to quickly mention our flagship Access India program, which has been highly successful. It's been like a beacon for investments by UK SMEs into India. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge the contribution of our most praiseworthy Indian community with the best entrepreneurial spirit. They constitute about less than 2% of UK's total population, but contribute over 6% of its huge GDP. So I will not preempt the words of the other speakers, but I would like to simply conclude my initial remarks by saying that this report is very much welcomed by the High Commission of India. We will now help to disseminate it widely. We will rely on it. We interact with chambers across the UK and focused on India-UK investment and trade flows in both directions. And this report will help us a great deal in giving a clear message to the British industry and corporate sectors to invest more in India. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for those very insightful and thought-provoking comments on our report and the bilateral trade and investment between the two countries. I'd now like to ask Your Excellency Alexander Ellis, British High Commissioner to the Republic of India, to give us your opening remarks and comments on the launch of this report. Over to you. Sir.
Thank you very much indeed. Anuj, could you hear me okay? The bandwidth is okay?
Yes, yeah.
Great, thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be in a fireside chat, even at distance from my excellent colleague, the Indian High Commissioner to the United Kingdom. It's very nice to see you. And Lord Karambil Moria, who is wearing a tie, with which I have a great deal of sympathy as well. It's very nice to see you all. Just listening to what people are saying, actually, particularly to what Gayatri was just saying, but what Pallavi was saying in the report. I mean, what do we learn? One, there is a lot going on. Yeah, there's a lot already. There's a strong basis of the relationship in terms of trade and investment. But secondly, there's kind of so much more we can do. And I think Pallavi said, things were continuing despite COVID. I would say because of COVID, we need to be doing more. And I really agree with Gayatri's example of Serum Institute. It's a really good model of some great research done in the UK and in extraordinary capacity actually in India for manufacture and for adaptation, which has a reach for India, for the UK, but also globally. And I think we have to think of ourselves as two countries which, when they come together, can actually have a global impact as well as an impact in each other's countries. We should think big in that way, and we have two big countries who should do exactly that. I think the combination of, actually, we have to turn the C19 into an opportunity for that cooperation. Likewise, we've left the European Union. We're now free of the constraints of the transition period. We actually have the opportunity to have our own trade policy, and that's why Secretary of State Liz Truss was in town a couple of weeks ago, exactly to take advantage of that opportunity. We've had Alok Sharma here as well this week, and we'll have more ministers to follow, and hopefully the Prime Minister pretty soon. So there's a lot that's going on already. There's a lot more we can do. I always think of the kind of four areas where I think really we can make a big difference are going to be on climate change and sustainability, on health, on defense and security, and on trade and investment. But I think trade and investment has got to support those other things. Remember, both of our economies are going to have to create a lot of jobs in the next decade. There's an enormous emphasis on employment creation. And we employ a lot of people already. The stats are really useful, actually, from that point of view. So thank you, Grant, for that. But there's so much more we can do in terms of job creation. And we have to build back in a more sustainable way. And again, the possibilities which exist for sustainable growth. So investment is not a kind of abstract word. It's actually about the creation of jobs, about the improvement and protection of our planet. It's also about the flow of ideas and talent between the two countries. Again, I think there's enormous mutual benefit from that. The Serum Institute is but one example of that, so that we're actually sharing new approaches to tackling the problems of the world. What can we do? We have to set up structure. Each country can do things bilaterally. You list quite a lot of what we can do bilaterally, unilaterally. I also think we have to do some structures together. That's why Liz Truss and Minister Goyal were speaking so much about what kind of structures can we put in place. And we have to send a political signal. I think it's really important. The visit of the Prime Minister to India is an opportunity to send a very strong signal to that incredibly entrepreneurial community, which Gayatri was referring to, and Commissioner Gayatri was referring to, in the UK and also in India. This is a great opportunity. Now, we've got a great entrepreneur going to speak after me, but you kind of want the next generation. Who is the next, who is the 25-year-old Lord Bill Moria, who is thinking, come on, I want to do something new, where I see an opportunity between these two countries to have an impact both economically, but also, I think, in terms of the environment and in jobs. So that, I think, is the challenge for us, to really stimulate an increased flow of ideas and innovation between the two countries. Thank you very much, and thank you for organising this event.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for those very, very terrific remarks. And you do raise some very, very interesting points which we all need to take on board in terms of taking forward and trying to think outside the box and look at, as you say, employment creation is a particularly important angle for both countries to focus on. I now like to ask my good friend, current Lord Bill Moria, to give us the industry, the entrepreneurial view of the launch of this report and his initial remarks and comments. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Anuj, and thank you to Soumya, thank you to Pallavi, thank you to Vishesh of Grant Thornton for organising this, and also I acknowledge Sandeep Chakrabarty's remarks and Sanjeev Bajaj, of course, I've met many times from CII. And I speak wearing my hats as founding chairman of the UK India Business Council, president of CBI, and of course, as an entrepreneur, as Alex has just said. And congratulations, Your Excellency, Alex, in taking office, and wish you all the very best. Now, it helps on a panel if you know people. Now, Alex and I were contemporaries at Cambridge, although we did not know each other then, but had lots of common friends. Gayatri, you've done such an amazing job in the UK. You've hit the ground running, and even in the virtual world. And within days of meeting, it transpires your family and the family that I started Cobra Gear with in Bangalore have been very, very close friends for many, many decades. And Anuj, without you, I wouldn't be here. The support that you and Grant Thornton gave Cobra in its early days, we would not be here without your support. So thank you for all that you do. And with this work that you do with India, which you've been doing for nearly 3 decades, apart from all the other work you do at Grant Thornton, has been amazing. And the India Meets Britain tracker, and I remember speaking at the first one, 7 years now. Look at it, it's now an authoritative report on Indian businesses in the UK. And I'm so glad you've done this the other way around with Britain Meets India as well. And I remember with the UK India Business Council, the objectives are very simple: to increase trade, business, and investment both ways between our countries. And this is looking both ways. And what is the objective of your report? The objective of your report is to encourage other companies that are not doing business in India to do business. And if you look at the statistics, I mean, 2 of the companies have grown by over 100%. That's phenomenal. So the opportunity is very much there. The number of people these companies employ, it's almost 500,000 people. And if you take indirectly another 500,000 people in India, so almost 1 million jobs created through British investment in India, and well-known names like HSBC and Unilever, but lots of other companies as well. The diversity issue was mentioned in the report. I'm working at the CBI diversity, women on boards in the UK. A target was set in 10 years ago to have 25% of women on boards of FTSE 250 companies. It was increased to 33% in 2015. Today, we have over 33% of board members of FTSE companies in the UK are women. So we've made a huge amount of progress. And I've just launched Change the Race Ratio, which is to increase ethnic minority participation across the board in business in the UK as well. So diversity is really important. I'm happy that your report has looked at this. And I congratulate, by the way, the CII on their 40 years in the UK. And by the way, where are the CII offices in the UK? They're based within the CBI offices, our headquarters in Cannon Street in the city. And we work so closely. All our sister organizations of the preeminent business organizations of every country in the world, which we work very closely with, the CII is our closest sister organization. And that's a special relationship that we have between UK and India. I just want to touch on a couple of points. And Gayatri, you've mentioned, as so have you, Alex, the priorities about climate change, health, defense, trade, and investment. And Gayatri, the target, we want to 4 times increase bilateral trade to 100 billion pounds. I've always said we're scratching the surface. And it's all the more important we need a UK-India enhanced trade partnership and eventually a free trade agreement. Why? Because we're about to join the CTPPP as the UK. That's 110 billion pounds of trade. We do 100 billion pounds of trade with China. And the RCEP, the RCEP, which India is not a member of, well, all the more why India and the UK need this partnership. It's got huge potential, and I'm looking forward to it. The budget, I just want to touch on the Indian budget. We've got a lot to learn from each other. And in the Indian budget, the Secretary of the Department of Economic Affairs, at an event that I spoke at recently, very clearly said, we have not increased taxes in this budget on the 1st of February because businesses have suffered so much the pandemic. We need to support businesses. Higher taxes will stifle the recovery. I hope our Chancellor, our Indian origin Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, has taken note of that. And also, another aspect of the Indian budget is states are being given, Gayatri must correct me if I'm wrong on this, 50-year interest-free loans to invest in infrastructure. We talk about our levelling up agenda in the UK. Wow, can you imagine if you give that level of financing to the regions to enable them to invest? So universities and business working together, which both Gayatri and Alex have spoken about, AstraZeneca, my friend Cyrus and other, Poonawalla, the Serum Institute of India, largest vaccine manufacturer here, AstraZeneca, Swedish-British company headquartered in Cambridge, fantastic. And then the last thing is the amount of work that is going on with universities. India's university policy is changing. Foreign universities will now be able to open up in India. This is great news. And universities like Birmingham, where I'm Chancellor, we're opening up a state-of-the-art campus in Dubai. We will be another university who'll be interested in opening up in India. Huge potential there. Collaborative research that is going on, including at Birmingham, the Railway Institute and the Railway Ministry in India, and also the Tigris project I chair at Cambridge, the second green revolution in India, and all the wonderful work with prop research that we're carrying out together. So it's amazing. Thank you, Granthorn. Congratulations on your report.
Thank you very much, Karan. So I think all three of you have given very, very thought-provoking and an interesting perspective on the India-UK trade investment and the opportunities in that corridor. I probably just like to ask you, I'm just conscious of the time and we are overrunning, just ask you a couple of specific questions. If I may turn to you, Your Excellency, Indian High Commissioner, just ask you, in your comments, you mentioned the Indian diaspora, what's been termed as the living bridge by Prime Minister Modi and others. How do you see the Indian diaspora in terms of playing a role in increasing both trade and investment between the UK and India? I mean, there's a lot of talk about the Indian diaspora and the economic power that they hold, and obviously the political power as well, because many of them are in government and politics as well. But how do you see that? How can we do more to actually get the Indian diaspora more engaged in trying to enhance that trade and investment between the UK and India? Would love to have your thoughts on that.
Yes, well, I have, because of the pandemic, not been able to throw myself among the diaspora and go and meet them and hear from them firsthand. But if I recall from the success of the event, which was hosted by Global Inc. Here in early July, a few days after I came, the huge participation, the huge level of interest, and the numbers that the diaspora represent in terms of businesses, in terms of turnover, in terms of contribution to the UK economy, in terms of generating jobs, is significant. and they are a living bridge. They are a natural connect, a very vibrant linkage, point of linkage, a very vibrant factor in the trade flows. But we are looking beyond that. That is always there. That has been there. That's the traditional bridge. The diaspora is, full of energy and looking at the schemes and initiatives and programs being offered, the opportunities that are opening up. But we want to look beyond that. We want to look at post-COVID, post-Brexit world. And we want to see what the UK and India can do with the new opportunities that have come up when global equations have changed in the last few months. Since we realized how essential supplies had to flow, they could not be held up by borders and lockdowns. So reshoring, sourcing of important medical equipment, pandemic trade. These are the things that one is hearing all the time now. Technology, and then of course IT, ICT. These are the areas where we all have realized that there is so much potential because of the changed way that people are working now. So financial services, fintech, these are the strengths of India and the UK. We have complementarities and we should build on the complementarities. So I wouldn't just rely on the very important foundation and a huge pillar of the diaspora. We're looking beyond that, well beyond that, on the Indian side and the UK side. And that's what the British High Commissioner in India and I here. And of course, with the support of the President of the Confederation of British Industry, we couldn't do it without the support of CII and FICCI and our chambers in India, and the huge support that I get from Lord Karan Bilimoria. So we would look forward to that, and that's what I feel about the diaspora's contribution, which is huge, and we have to build on it.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. High Commissioner Ellis, just one quick sort of follow-up question for you. Do you think, in terms of the geopolitical dynamics that are happening in South Asia as well as obviously in Europe, do you see that playing a role in terms of the enhanced trade and investment relationship between the two countries?
Yeah, undoubtedly. Thanks for the question. First of all, may I just add a very strong agreement to what Her Excellency Gayatri was saying. I'm reading some essays about India at the moment. I've come across a Satyajit Ray quote, which must be very well known, about the risks of the love of the false exotic, the presentation of the false exotic. And what I really think we have to do is to show India as it is. The British people have to understand the India as it is. It's a complex country, its reality and its opportunity. And diaspora has a very important role to play in that, but I think it can go wider than that. And that's one of my jobs as well, to kind of get that message back. I also think business has a fantastic opportunity to do that, just the reality of how life is and the opportunities which exist all over India. I think that you may know that my last job was working as the Deputy National Security Advisor, looking at the integrated review, which is like a sort of 5 to 10 year plan of how the UK does its defence and development and overseas and diplomatic strategy. And we're turning on a different axis now. The US-China relationship is a different one from the one before. And I think it's going to require countries like the UK and India to forge bonds of trust, from which trade and investment flow, but which go beyond trade and investment. And that's why I think defence and security will matter a lot as well in the future. Because I know others refer to it, trust in being flows of, for example, pharmaceuticals, which indeed the Indian government did exactly that in one of the most difficult moments at the start of the crisis. And from that, many things happen. And so I would like to see that kind of tightening of trust between the two countries. because much good can come from that. And I think that is a consequence of the geopolitics we face, which is frankly, it's going to be a more competitive world for the next 10 years, and quite different to the one I started my diplomatic career in. And we have to, have to face reality as it is, and then create a relationship. And that's why the Prime Minister invited, amongst other things, why the Prime Minister Johnson invited PM Modi to this year's G7, and why he wants to come to India as one of his first trips abroad, exactly to strengthen those bonds of trust.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I'm very conscious of time, but I'd like to now turn to Lord Bilumura Karan. In terms, you invested in India some time ago, and just wanted to get your perspective as an entrepreneur, how the landscape has changed, and what do you see can be done more to attract UK SMEs, particularly to invest in India. And the Indian High Commissioner has mentioned obviously the India Access Program, but what more can be done? But I think it might be great to hear your views as an entrepreneur and as an investor in terms of India now, in India when you invested, in India today.
Yes, I think that His Excellency Alex just put it, you've got to look at it as the reality. The reality is that India has been liberalizing from the start, from 1991, at different phases. So there was a huge increase in liberalization in the 2000s. And even now we're seeing a rapid increase in liberalization. So the more the economy opens up, so for example, in the latest budget, insurance, foreign companies can now invest up to 74% instead of 49%. In defense, there's been liberalization there for investment in defense that took place recently. So I think the more than that happens, the more you will attract inward investment. And I always say this, the UK is the second or third largest recipient of inward investment in any year. Why? Because we're one of the most open, outward-looking economies, and that openness attracts inward investment. And we're seen as a gateway to Europe. I hope we continue to be a gateway to Europe even after leaving the European Union. We always have been, particularly for Indian companies, and I think it's important we maintain that. The other aspect is actually seeing is believing. The more we can encourage SMEs to come to India, to see it for themselves, to see the enormous opportunity. And that's why I think things like youth mobility is really important. And our Home Secretary, Preeti Patel, has said that we've got a bespoke youth mobility program that is going to be instituted. Now, that's really important. And that also involves the exchange of students, the Turing scheme that will be replacing the Erasmus scheme as a worldwide scheme. And I hope there'll be lots of Indian students who take part in the Turing scheme, and our students also going to India. So the more of that exchange we have, the youth, the more people will see the opportunity, the more businesses will take part in each other's countries. And I think that's absolutely crucial.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much to each of you. I would love to have continued this fireside chat for another half an hour at least, but I'm very conscious of the time, and we did start late. So on behalf of Grant Thornton and CII, may I thank each of you very much for taking up your time and joining this fireside chat. I also take this opportunity to thank Sanjeev Bajaj and Joint Secretary Mr. Chakravarti for their opening remarks on this topic. I will now hand back over to Soumya, who will take over proceedings. And thank you all very much for joining this fireside chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, speakers, for a very stimulating session, and thank you, Anuj, for moderating the session. We're now even more confident that the India-UK relationship will touch new heights as both countries become key partners in each other's growth story. I'd now like to request Vishesh C. Chandiok, CEO of Grant Thornton Bharat and member of the Global Board, as well as Chair of the Economic Policy and Development Committee at CII Northern Region, to deliver the closing remarks for today. Vishesh, over to you.
Thank you, Soumya. I think, as everybody noticed, we are over time, so I'll keep my remarks very brief. It's been a fantastic panel. I was listening very intently, and to keep an audience for an hour is not easy, and I saw most of the participants were still there. What I really picked up from the panel was 2 or 3 things, which I will summarize. First of all, I sense an opportunity for a real change in narrative around this UK-India relationship. Both the High Commissioners touched on that in the sort of post getting out of the constraints of Europe. as one of them put it, and the post-Brexit opportunity that the other High Commissioner talked about. Of course, that £100 billion target by 2030. And I wanted to give some color on that. When you compare that, the EU-UK trade currently is about 650 billion. Right? So 100 billion is still 6 times smaller than that. And as Lord Villamoria mentioned, it is close to where the Chinese trade is today. Right? With all the relocating supply chains, the production-linked incentives being provided by India, and that 15 to 17% new investment tax rate Pallavi talked about, India ought to be a compelling proposition. Sanjeev talked about it being the 40th year of CII's office in the UK. I'd also like to mention here that it's the 50th year of Grant Thornton in India, and actually the 30th year of Anuj setting up the UK India desk in London, probably the first accounting firm that did so. It's much more common today, but for 30 years, Anuj has been driving that UK India corridor from the UK, of course, ably supported by colleagues on this end. I think in terms of data from the report, what really stood out on is how equal that investment is on both sides. About 650 companies for the latest report, Indian companies in the UK, 572 is what Pallavi's report talked about, right? So not that far out. 37 billion pounds is the collective turnover in the UK of those 650 companies. If I got my crores and billions right, 34 billion pounds roughly is the turnover of the UK companies in India. So very similar, 37, 34 billion. Of course, the number of employees, 174,000 employees collectively of those companies in the UK, 416,000 in India. You'd expect that. But that big opportunity that Excellency Mr. Ellis touched on of job creation, that big priority on both sides to create jobs. And I think Excellency Kumar touched on COVID as an opportunity. And it was Mr. Uday Kotak that first used that term with me. Geography is history. COVID provides that opportunity where geography is history, and now the ability to actually work on financial services, IT services, and really all jobs from anywhere. And I think that's an opportunity, and we've seen that at Grant Thornton. We've helped our UK firm compete for work that it would not otherwise have had resource for. So it's not really taking UK jobs to India. We're now up to 100 people supporting them in on that project from India. And I think that's what we ought to give. And I think Lord Villamoria, of course, said the most important thing on the panel. Without Grant Thornton, I would not be here. I would, of course, like to just let him know and everybody else that without people like Lord Villamoria, our clients, we would not be here also. So thank you very much for your support over the years, Lord Villamoria, and for the outstanding job you've done to be a beacon for that UK-India relationship on both ends. My congratulations to everybody, of course, and big thank you to CII, UK's Department of Trade, for this partnership, which we really value, for 7 years, producing the India Meets Britain tracker, and now extended to that tracker here. We hope to keep diving in deeper on this data in the years to come, and would like to see that change in narrative that I opened with actually play out. Thank you very much for making time for us today. Stay safe, stay healthy, see you soon. Thank you.